on, record. All right, here we go. Let me hit the button here.
A woman's looks does not matter. It is how much she is doing for you that matters.
Expectations lead to disappointment. Expectations lead to arguments in a lot of ways.
You shouldn't expect somebody to act a certain way, and when they do or don't, you should have a backup plan for that.
As I'm trying to figure out what's happening, why 40% or 50% of women black women over 40 are not married or have these in-depth relationships.
All right, welcome to another edition, of Why Love Waits. And this is Dr. B, and just excited about having James and Sam and Tanisha on tonight as we really start talking about family and family values. And last week we had a really good, you can go back and watch the replay, just talking about where we fit into our government right now and how are we going to continue with just the division and stuff that's in our country and the things that continue to move on and go on that just sometimes divide us, not only as a country, but as a community and as families as well. And so one of the things that we started talking about last week is we started talking about values. And one of the things that came up several times during our conversation is, that we need to have good values, and the family needs to grow up with values and what those values are. But one of the things that I wasn't sure of is what are those common core values? What are those things that we have decided or we believe in our own, nuclear systems as to what a value is, and beyond just what a value is what are the ones that we wish for our children and our grandchildren, and as several of us have grandchildren and some of us just have kids. But what do we want for our communities? Sometimes, Sam and I were both school teachers at one point and realized that the kids who were coming to school had several different value systems based on the family that they came from. And sometimes it's regional. Sometimes there's, parts of at least our country here have a different value system. I know, like in the South, a lot of the values or what I'll hear from kids and teenagers is a lot of yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. The typical, I don't know what happens at the home, but I know there's just this respect that sometimes you feel. And then you go to Southern California and there's no yes, sir, yes, ma'am. There's, get out of my face or whatever it is. And especially with some of our kids, and I think the older the kids get, the more that whether it's the rights that they have or what they've been told that they have. I know when we see some of the what we call helicopter parents that hover over their kids and make sure that they nothing can possibly happen to them. But then sometimes you see some of those kids that they kind of run the family, whereas you see in some other cultures that they don't get to run the family, that the parents do. And so today I'd really love to kind of start off the conversation and talk about core values and what that means and what those are. And I'll just open it up to the floor right away before I give my 2 cents of some of the values that I think that are there. But I'll let you guys maybe share with our audience what you guys believe some of the core values should be that families have.
Well, I'll say that it should be honesty, respect, and integrity.
Okay.
I say integrity, love,
Okay.
and do no harm.
Okay. I'm writing these down as we go. Sam? Are you there?
You're muted, Sam.
Muted.
Sam, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. I would say forgiveness, um, honesty, and respect. I think that would be one of the biggest ones.
All right. So I know some of you guys use the same one. So if we think about respect, what does it mean to have respect? So is this something that, as a 2-year-old, as a 5-year-old, as a 14-year-old, what does it mean to respect? Is it your parents that you respect? Is it your community? Is it the people that have authority or perceived authority over you? What does respect mean when you say that as a family value?
So I would say respect has to be mutual, or there is no respect for me. If you don't respect, when I was growing up, I respected my mother and father enough when they told me to shut up and go sit in the corner. I did so. I don't want to be racial, but I went over one of my friend's houses when I was younger, and he was Caucasian, and he actually was cursing at his parents and everything. I almost passed out. I can't believe that, because if I would have cursed my parents out, they would have probably killed me right there at the kitchen table. So families have to have that mutual respect. The parents have to respect the children enough to listen to what they got to say, to accept some of their ideas, and then, of course, like I said, the kids have to respect the parents.
How do you teach respect?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know.
I say you would have to model it, but it would start with the parents respecting themselves. So I, as an individual, would know what it means to respect myself before I ask my son to respect me. Because it is not do as I say. What is it? Do as I say, not as I do. So if I'm saying respect me, but every action shows that it is okay to disrespect myself or allow it, then it's hypocritical. So I have to, when I talked about love, is love myself to understand what respecting myself is, to pour that into another individual. I often hear respect is earned and not given. And I think that a lot of people want respect, but they don't give it. They expect it, which I have spoken about over and over, expectations. And so it doesn't make sense. So kids watch what you do, it's not what you say. And if you are not modeling that behavior, then it causes confusions, but it also causes them to go the opposite way. There was a situation where I had to choose myself. I wasn't being respected, but I was pouring into my son, asking him not to show up in a certain way until it was like a gut punch to me. Like, I can't ask him to do something that I'm not going to do. So I had to put a pause and model that behavior and then have that conversation with him. And so then there's a level of respect, because now he can see me respecting myself, which would then allow him not only to respect me, but respect himself. There's a value right there. That's a value that I'm giving. It's added value. So that's my thoughts.
Okay.
I think that respect is a mutual understanding of what is right and wrong in your family, and what your guys' goal, or what your family's values are at that point. So if you understand that, hey, this is right and this is wrong, and then you go back to being the leader in that, and showing it over and over, then they know they can trust you. So that trust becomes respect about who you are, and what you expect of them, the expectations. And I think you said you've covered that with expectations. So respect would be knowing what's right and wrong for your family, and then trusting that person has your best interest in mind. And therefore, I think you get that back. And when that goes as a family, then honesty is a huge thing, so that it comes back to you as well. So if everybody's honest, they understand that they respect you enough to be honest with you.
So let me backtrack to what I said when I said I wasn't sure, I didn't know.
Okay.
Is because, like, for me, I feared my parents, so there was that respect there, right? But I understand what everybody's saying because there's respect is multifaceted. I mean, and it depends on the individual, because some people are not going to respect you regardless. It depends on their mindset if you respect them or not, right? When I got to college, right, I thought I was going to get all kind of respect where I live, but more people got respect coming out of jail than I did out of college. So I guess it's a mindset of where that respect rests. If that makes sense.
Yeah, if respect is valuing a person's thoughts, space, opinions, and differences, and that's I guess our textbook definition of respect is valuing whatever people's thoughts are. When I think about one of my pillars in my podcast is trust. And I ask people when I'm doing the podcast, do you begin with trust, or does somebody have to earn it first? Like, you don't trust anybody until they prove they can be trustworthy, or you trust them until they prove they're untrustworthy. And I think respect kind of is like that, where in some respects you say, okay, so I'm going to respect you until you give me a reason not to, because because I believe from my personal values, and I'm valuing your thoughts, your opinions, and your differences. But until you disrespect me or not, I guess, reciprocate valuing my opinions and differences, because I think that's where we get into trouble a lot is we say, okay, I will value your differences. Not really, because you're this way or you're that way. Not really. When I kind of think of like law enforcement and what we're taught as young Black men, or what we teach our boys as young Black men, you need to give that respect for whatever that badge is. However, you have to do it with caution. You have to do it, you have to, it's your hands on 2 and 10. It's your yes sir, no sir. It's those things, so you don't end up, getting a beating, because we've shown over and over and over and over again that there are a lot of people in law enforcement that don't respect the color of our skin first. They respect it after maybe you have a conversation with them or you talk to them. I think when we're raising our kids and they're young, we say, wait a minute, this is their turn to speak. Okay, you need to stop. I know you have an opinion, Miss 3-year-old granddaughter who's here, and you're going to tell me everything that's going on in your life, but stop, wait. You have to respect that, whether it's an adult that's speaking or somebody else. And so I guess that's where I kind of see it is when we talk about respect is, at what point do you stop respecting a person? James, when you just talked about somebody coming out of jail, was that respect given to that person because their status maybe in the jail system, and then when they're coming out, people respect what they already know about that person who was inside based on being there? Or is it, because I don't know if everybody in the community respects everybody who comes, or maybe they're not, opposite anti-pillar in the community, but right, they're still respecting them for what they might be able to do to you if you treat them wrong.
It kind of ties into what was that, reverend authority, or I can't remember the different types of authority, but I can respect somebody I don't know based on their accomplishments.
Okay.
So recently I was in Atlanta for a conference and I met Bakari Sanders, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't know him, right? But I respected him immediately. As soon as he opened his mouth, we talked, we had a drink together, whatever. And just a very intelligent guy. Just when he got up on stage and was talking about his resume, I'm a lawyer, I'm a commentator on TV, whatever, blah, blah. So I respected him, off rip at the beginning. Now, I don't know if I got that respect back because he didn't know me, but I have to assume that he gave me some respect because we were introduced to a mutual friend. But respect is something, if I see that you've accomplished something in your life or you have so much on your resume, I cannot help but to respect you until you disrespect me, if that makes sense.
I like that because if you know somebody's pedigree or where they're from, when I think about athletes on the other side of it, right? That might be a little bit different than somebody who is an attorney or somebody who's a common. Do we respect athletes just because of what they accomplished and were able to, play ball or whatever it is? Or is there, is that an automatic respect? It's because we know they worked hard to get there? Or is it a cautious respect based on we don't know who they are? Or is that something in our age that says, well, I've been around a lot of athletes and I'm going to have to,
Right.
Yeah.
So, like Tanisha, right? I have not met her in person. We've been on the podcast together, right? And there was immediate respect for her, Tia, a few of them. Just the tone and tenure of their voice and the maturity in the way they talk, you had to respect them, right? I talk to a lot of people. I deal with, people that are up on the higher end of the scale and the lower end of the scale. And it doesn't matter where you're at in life, it's how you talk and how you present yourself, that I respect you. I worked in Manhattan at a bank called Manufacturers Hanover Trust. So we were in processing in the HR area. And, I had a suit and tie and I was talking to the lady and whatever. So this guy came in, he had dreadlocks. This is in the 80s. He started shouting, and you do this now and blah, blah. And, immediate disrespect. I was like, who can respect this guy? He's coming in here yelling. He's not dressed appropriately. It smells like marijuana. I mean, how does he expect them to respect him enough to give him a job? So,
which brings another point. If we would like to have respect, what are some of those common themes in our society that we have to show up as, or we should? I mean, you talked about dress as being one. I can remember, when I was an athlete in high school, and that's, this is the way that we had to dress on game days. So we'd be respected. They wanted us to wear ties. And I remember when I was teaching high school and I could barely get the kids to pull up their pants on any day, but they wanted respect and respect from each other. I mean, was that the sign of you'll respect me? Because, I was thinking I should have went to school instead of be a teacher. I should have went to school to be an orthopedic surgeon, because all those folks wearing their pants there was their hips are going to be all out of whack by the time they're 60. And then be in business forever.
So, and I think there's nonverbal cues of respect.
What about, dress and tone and all those kinds of. Mm-hmm.
You broke up there for a minute.
Oh, I wouldn't say anything. You were talking.
Oh, okay. So, I'm going to say that there's nonverbal cues to respect to. So growing up, my father always said, look a man in your eye, in his eyes when you talk to him. Give him a firm handshake, right? So those things kind of, and then it's something about bass in the voice, right? In a man's voice or the tenure of your voice. Even pets will stand up and give you respect, right? Because we had a dog, when my mother would tell him to sit down, wouldn't do it. When my father told me, sit down, right? And he sat down. So there's nonverbal cues to respect too.
Which then brings the cultural point up, because most of our Asian communities, if you look them in the eye and you try to shake their hand with that's a form of disrespect in that culture, because you're respecting somebody by bowing and walking backwards. So I guess we have to learn some of those cues when we're talking to, because that's what I was taught too. Like, always look a person in the hand, grab, but then, I have a lot of friends that are, in Asian culture now, and that's like, if you do that, now you're disrespecting the elder that you're doing that with. And how do we learn those different cues that are there? Are there other cultures where that's the same, or what are some of those cues that, because, it's hard to teach our kids, I guess we can do it from what our own belief system is. But then we know they're out in the world in our school system that is probably teaching them something different.
I think we have to define respect too, because there's a such thing as fear that is also said to be respect. And so making sure that we are not moving with with the idea of fear, putting fear in somebody as a way of respect. In some African cultures, like, so I have been asked to do mock interviews for an organization. And one of the things that I noticed is culturally, like some of the women who were interviewing would always look down. And so when they're going to get a job, that is perceived as lack of confidence. And that's not the case. It is, like you just said, in the Asian culture, it is a sign of respect. And so what I would do is, for those other counterparts that were with me, who were the mock interviewers like myself, I would do a explanation on behalf of that young woman who was of Muslim background, and state, like, this is no disrespect to you as the interviewer. This is culture, and this is their sign of respect. But also there is a fear. So I remember growing up, it was like, you fear your parents, and so that was the sign of respect. But is that really respect to fear? We place that on our kids in society, and then they don't show up with confidence and knowing how to respect themselves. They move in a space of fear. So just making sure that we define it and understand what respect really means. And again, I do think it begins with one knowing self and knowing the things that they are worthy and deserving of, versus not knowing. So it's like a thing of knowing. If you know where you came from, you know where you're going. And if you know who you are innately, and it is of pure love, and you are moving with integrity, so that means doing what's right even when no one is looking, there is a level of respect of what you will engage in, or what you will allow. And I just wonder if people are moving in fear and calling it respect, and just not having a clear understanding of self.
Yeah, so just what are some of the, when I think about respect, and I think about how many arguments, fights, disagreements are caused by a feeling of disrespect, what are some of the things that we probably are miscues, or when we feel like we've been disrespected and we're not, when we, whether we were or not, I mean, in some cases, I believe we probably are, but what are some of the things that we should watch out for, that we're really not being disrespected, but we believe we are? And it starts these tremendous, especially
You're freezing.
now I'm really jumping into our Why Love Waits conversation today.
You're freezing a little bit.
I lost. Am I back now?
Yes. So what I would say with that is, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. One of the reasons why it is considered disrespect is because we are quick to react or to respond. And responding is actually to think, which means you need to listen clearly so that you can respond. But we react, which is a habit. And so we don't listen for understanding and clarity and comprehension. We listen because we want, or we react because we want to be right. We want our voices to be louder than the other person. It's this victim state of mind. It is this control and authoritative presence. It's this power. And so then that's where the disrespect comes in, because if we sit and we listen to the individual, we may find that the way that they're delivering the message is not out of disrespect. It is out of the way that they were raised. And so we can learn something from them, and then we can have a conversation of what we need in this particular interaction or relationship to move forward. How do we hear things? How do we perceive things? This is a perception. Am I reacting because I've experienced this before, and so therefore I have shut down and I can't hear this individual? There's a lot of things in that, but I do, because we don't listen. We want to be right.
Yeah, we don't listen, like you said, we don't listen to be understood. We listen to respond, or we listen till we can get our next thing in without even starting to pay attention to what somebody's actually telling us.
So here's a cue that somebody's about to disrespect you, right? They say, well, no disrespect. And then they continue to disrespect you, right? I'm just saying, is that just me or what? So I watch out for that, right? And then after that, and it depends on your level of self-esteem, right? Of course, you should never forget where you come from. But if you have a certain level of self-esteem and somebody hits on that or says something off the wall, I've stopped back. I've stopped conversation and say, hold on, wait a minute. What are you saying? What are you trying to say? Right. I'm pretty thick skinned because I did 25 years in the Army, 24 and a half years, 5 days. But certain people will say things and I'm like, what, and I will get offended. Right. Nobody really messes with my peace. But if you disrespect me or I feel offended, I'm going to tell you right there so we don't have no problems. And I have a habit of talking with my hands sometimes or pointing, and some people will find that disrespectful. But I think disrespectful is in the mind of who is receiving the information. Respect or disrespect. You can change it either way.
Does a lot of that come from ego? When you're feeling disrespected or offended?
Ego, super ego, and your id, right? So you have to have some sense of ego. If you want to, you can't. I used to be scared to public speak or speak in front of people because I had bad teeth and I used to hold my hand in front of my mouth all the time, right? So I don't know, maybe it's a esteem issue from when I was younger or whatever. And I let a lot of things slide, but at a certain point, you have to stand up for yourself, right? You don't want to look like you're, a wet noodle and somebody's just talking crazy to you. Right. I had to stand up for a lady at the VA. We're all volunteers, and one of the volunteers said, "Hey, we don't need you. Go home," right? Because she was the easy mark. So she was easy to disrespect, and she just like put her head down and she was walking out the door. Hold on. I said, I'm going to go talk to her for you. And she tried that with me, and I had to tell her what time of day it was. I don't like bullies. I think that's part of it. But you should respect everybody. There's a modicum of respect for everybody.
Or there should be.
There should be.
There should be. Yeah. So, as I was just thinking about the reasons that folks feel disrespected, the first one is like what Tanisha was just saying, is unmet expectations. We expect certain behaviors, like being listened to, I guess would be one thing. And when others fall short, it feels like we're just being disregarded. But we can't control others either. And so should we expect people to act a certain way?
I don't know, because again, expectations. So when you're in a relationship, whether platonic, it doesn't matter. You have to understand that you have two individuals coming from two different backgrounds, raised in separate households, and may not carry the same values. So to expect someone to show up in a certain way if they've never been taught or coached in the way that you have, you're going to feel attacked. You're going to feel disrespected. But if you have a conversation and say, hey, this is the way that I was raised, this is what respect means to me, these are the things that I value, then it's not to dismiss them, it is to say, hey, this is how I move. They're probably more open to hear you. And then when you explain the way that you move, the way that you think, more than likely that person is going to be tapped in not to do that thing that you may find disrespectful. They're gonna work hard to make sure that they don't offend. But the other piece of it is looking at oneself. So if you are coming up against whatever disrespect or feeling like you are not being seen or heard, that person is the messenger. It's mirror. So it says less about them and more about you. What do you need to change? If you are taking it personal and you're like, they're just being disrespectful and I expected more out of them, it is for me saying that there's some things that you need to work on in your life, because that's the messenger. So whether it's them or someone else, this was going to keep coming up until you resolve it. And so not to take things personally, to to ask questions for clarity, but to also explain and define what these things mean to you instead of a blanket statement. I expect you to respect me. I expect you to show up this way. What does that actually mean? And no one can make you feel any way. It is all you. Um, and that's something that I had to learn. You made me feel, no, I feel this way when you said what came up was this feeling. That person didn't do
Yeah,
So,
and then go ahead, James.
so I'm gonna say, I think you touched on earlier about where you're from and how you were raised and everything. So where I'm from, uh, we joke a lot, and we do little digs, like the Joneses game, or talk about each other's mother, just jokingly, right? So I was talking to a friend of mine the other night. I haven't talked to him in years. We grew up together, best friends, whatever. So he said, "Hey man, I saw that picture. You look like you needed a bra." And I said, "Well, you look like you was 8 months pregnant, right?" We could go back and forth and talk like that and have a good time and laugh about it, but we can't do that with people that weren't raised in the same, mindset of how we talk to and respect each other, right? And then you could misinterpret things, right? Like Sam
Mhm.
said, "Are you sure that's not ego?" Right? Now, that might have, hit me the wrong way if I didn't know Sam, right? If he was just some guy on the street, making the assumption that I have a big ego, and that's why I was offended, right? So you gotta kind of know the person and take it with a grain of salt. So respect, again, is in the mindset of the person receiving the message.
Do we overly take offense, especially for people we don't know very well? Should
Of
we give
course.
them more grace, or should we just always be on that? I'm going to take offense to what you say when you say it.
it.
Well, I think you got to make it clear. I've had some people, right, kind of come across the wrong way, and I had to ask for clarity, right? I'm older now, and I asked for clarity. I said, "What did you mean by that?" Right? So now, if you double down on it, yes, you disrespected me, and I got to come back at you. But if it was a simple mistake, saying, "Oh, okay, I thought it was X, Y, Z," got it, no problem. But yes, if you don't know somebody, like joking with somebody, I would have to know them a little better before I start joking with them and playing whatever. It's a respect thing, right? Like if you don't look at me when I'm talking to you, and you look away or you don't answer, that's kind of disrespectful. That's kind of like being ignored, right? A lot of people say my tone and tenure is wrong sometimes because I say, if they ask me a question, I'll say absolutely not. That's just how I talk. It doesn't mean that I'm mad at you. It's just how I speak.
When you have an opinion about a subject matter, do you believe that people should have different opinions, or do you believe that your opinion is always right?
Ooh, I'm gonna let Sam tackle that one.
I think that comes from your point of view. Because if you have a point of view where there is no other right answer but where you're at, and you're very closed-minded, I think that your point of view is always the right way. But you don't ever get to see what everybody else's point of view is and how they're taking it from where their perspective is. That's a great question. I don't know. I think most people should be open to everybody's point of view, and then get to actually see where theirs actually fits in. I think that's a respect thing too. If you're going to actually respect what their view is, then you can actually be open to different points of view.
So, like myself and Sam were talking the other day, right, about the insurance, Sam, and everybody wants to be right, right? Nobody really wants to be wrong. But in the course of the conversation, he might have thought I was coming across as aggressive, right? But I had to take a step back. He's laughing. I had to take a step back and look at what he was saying, because I swear I was getting 38% interest on this investment. So he told me he sold life insurance before, and he was, this is how it works, blah blah blah. I said, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." But it took me a minute to come down and say, well, maybe he's right. I'm looking at the numbers now because facts mean more to me. If you show me facts, I'm going to say, okay, you're right, I'm wrong, right? But if I'm dividing, the cash value over what I put in and it's 38%, I'm thinking 38%. So Sam, you was right. And I'll tell you in public, you're right. But we go back and forth, right? Now I'm going to just say that I have a lot of friends that are Trumpers, right? I'm definitely not a Trumper, right? And I present facts all day. They have that confirmation bias where nothing sticks, right? You can tell them, okay, well, they're trying to bankrupt the government and they're hiring black people. He's prejudiced. No, he's not. No, he's not. They'll always come up with some alternate facts that don't make sense, right? So that kind of irritates me when I'm presenting you with facts and you're dismissing them. So I think that's kind of disrespectful too, if you don't even want to hear the other side of the argument.
I can agree with that. In those individuals, you just have to keep it pushing because they are intentional. It's that ignorance is bliss, or I refuse to hear because it doesn't. I would have to acknowledge, and so this is for my benefits. You just have to keep it pushing past that because it's not your business and ministry. You exhaust yourself. So what was that? Muhammad Ali did the rope-a-dope on George Foreman. You let him exhaust himself and he won the round. That's what will happen with us if we go round to round with these individuals who refuse to listen to facts. We will exhaust ourselves, and the fight that we are meant to fight, we will not be able to do what we need to do because we are giving too much attention to ignorance. And it's not even ignorance, it's pure stupidity because they know better and they decide not to do better. So that's how I see that. Don't give them that energy. They don't deserve your energy.
So here's the thing, right? The first time he was in office, I lost a lot of friends because I just cut him off. I said, "You ignorant." I did what you did. I was like, I don't have time for it. But right now, our democracy is at stake. And you have to try to sway anybody who's either on the fence or so entrenched they can't see anything, or people they don't. A lot of my friends have not exposed themselves as people who voted for Trump, right? So when they do tell me, I said, well, why did you do that? I didn't get offended. I said, well, why did you do that? Does that make sense to you? I have a very good friend at the VA. He's a Caucasian gentleman. He's older, right? And we were talking about Trump's picture's not up in the VA yet, right? So we were talking about pictures, and I said, well, how about the black people they took off of the websites? Jackie Robinson, the Tuskegee Airmen, all that stuff. And he's, oh, that was an accident. It was a mistake. They put it back. Really? I can't see that as a mistake. The first Black General Medal of Honor winner they took off, Jackie Robinson, all of these people, it was a mistake. They didn't take off any Caucasian people by mistake, right? So he just didn't want to. Me and another guy. So another guy came up and he joined the conversation. He was a brother, got in the conversation, and he got so pissed off he walked away. But I think when you cut conversation short or hang up the phone on somebody, you're showing ignorance. So I'll let you hang up on me, right? I'll even let you walk away because I was still talking when he walked away, right? Ghetto man kind of jumped out of me, and I said, "Hey man, where you going? We not finished, right?" And I got up to walk behind him and talk. I said, "But you know what? It's not worth it. I don't want him to think that I'm encroaching in his space, and he wants to get physical." But that really irritates me. That is a big form of disrespect to me, not just as a black man, but just commonsensical. Why would you do that? That doesn't even make any sense, right? So that's just
what I'm saying. Is that the distraction though? Because maybe your conversation are with those individuals who may have voted for him and did it for whatever reason, but they are willing to hear you and listen to understand. Do you see what I'm saying? Like sometimes people just don't want to. They know what you're saying is logical and makes sense, but they refuse because they want to be the devil's advocate, or whatever it is, they choose it. And so is that your distraction so that you can't have the conversation with those who are willing to listen and acknowledge and maybe change?
So I think it's the fact that I believe he respects me because I talk to him all the time, kind of as a friend, right? He's older. He's like 70 something years old, never served in the military, whatever, but he just comes to support vets, right? So when I talk to him, I don't scream at him. I don't get upset like a lot of people, like my friend did, walked away and cursing all that. No, because you're showing ignorance. You have to show him that you're intelligent enough to have a logical debate without it getting heated, right? And I'm sure you guys have had a debate where it got so heated that you wanted to, throw fisticuffs, right? And I'm too old for that now. I'll just walk away after I've tried my best to convince you.
So, but here's what I would say, James, because I'm listening to you say I don't get upset, I don't get mad, but then I'm also hearing the questions that you ask. Here's what I think. In every conversation I am 100% right. I'm 100% right about knowing I could be 50% wrong or 50% right. And so I know it could go either way, but I'm willing to learn based on what somebody has a conversation. But I can see a person's point of view. You're not getting angry, but you said, so you voted for Trump. Why did you do that? Does that make any sense? So right then you're telling the person that they are not very intelligent. You're not being upset. You're not being mad, but you're like, right. Obviously it made sense to them to vote at that time for that person, or they wouldn't have done it. But you're telling them that they're stupid for doing what they did.
No, well, so
being nice about it.
Yeah. So it's a compound question. Why is the first question, right? And I said, right. That doesn't make sense because I do things that don't make sense, right? We all do things that don't make sense. We do it, and then we think about it. Man, that didn't make sense, right?
Yeah. But you're telling them it doesn't make sense. You're not asking them if it made sense to them. Right?
I did. I said, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. So
it's condescending though. It's real condescending. Like,
well, I'm a condescending guy. What can I tell you?
You know what I mean? You'd be like, does that make sense to you, stupid?
I said, does that make sense? Doesn't make sense. Because here's why it doesn't make sense. If you run an what do you call that? Home health care or whatever that relies on Medicaid, and they're going to cut Medicaid, you're going to vote for somebody who's going to cut your money and, scale back your lifestyle. Why would you do that? That doesn't make sense to me. So do you understand where I'm coming from?
Oh, well, I totally understand your argument. That you're saying it. I mean, because who's to say that Camilla wouldn't have done the same thing? I mean, that wouldn't have cut funding. And I'm just playing the devil's advocate right now. I did not vote the way anybody thinks I voted. So, it's just, when you're having these conversations, and just like Tanisha said, is are we listening? Are we just trying to make sure they believe and move over to the side that we're on? And then I guess facts are, when I think of some of the facts, and I think of our government over the last 40 years, I see what's happening with how many government workers are being laid off right now. But then in the Clinton administration, how many did he lay off? Like 350 some thousand, right? I mean, I try to look at it and go, what are the facts? And facts are hard to find sometimes because they're in this midst of all these opinions. I hate our news cycles now. I refuse to watch the news because they're everybody's opinion. When do we get like actual facts, or we just get people's beliefs of what they think the facts are?
Right. So in opinions, you have to dig for the facts, right? For instance, I was watching Trump selling Teslas at the White House, right? And some of the opinions were, well, he's doing that, one, to support Elon Musk, two, because the sales are declining. Now, I didn't know the sales were declining. I had to look it up to, verify what the opinion was. They were going out of business, whatever. And they've lost like 40 or 50% of its value. And then I saw another clip today that they were telling employees, begging them not to sell their shares of stock while they were selling theirs, right? So, I saw that on the news. I was like, well, let me see, so I had to go on Yahoo Finance, and and watch the curve of Tesla going down, right? So again, in people's opinions, there's always some kind of facts that you have to dig for. You ever heard there's truth in jest? So the same thing
Yes.
with opinions, right? Because I'll listen to your opinion, then I'll give you mine, and between the two, we should be able to have an intelligible conversation where we bring out the facts after our opinions. Does that make sense?
So let's take this micro to a relationship in a family.
Oh,
And we're having these conversations. Are we having the conversations where we have to be right, and we're skewing our conversations based on our interpretation of the facts? And then when we look about history, right, and you talk about, like, how we see our history based on the perception of the person who won the battle. That's whose history we always see. We always see the victors, perception of history. But then I look at the history of our families and history in our nuclear units. Who has to be right in order for us to be together?
the husband. My wife's listening, so I couldn't say that too loud.
She's ready to come in the room with
Say it one more time for the people in the back who couldn't hear.
Oh, my wife jumped in on that one.
I'm going to say this, right? They
From
say,
the cheap seats.
yeah, they said happy wife, happy life, right? And what is it? Happy house, happy spouse, whatever it is. So, we forget the man's piece of that, right? So I think a woman should believe and trust in her man enough to follow him, right? Yes, give your opinion, and we love your opinion, all that stuff. I got you. But baby, I think this is what needs to happen. As the man, you should trust my leadership. And saying fall in line is probably gonna piss some people off, but we need to be a cohesive unit, right? I can't go east and you go west. We have to meet somewhere in the middle, right? And go south or north together. Does that make sense? So that's why I said that. It wasn't to demean women. I love women. Love my wife to death. Yes, we have discussions. We don't even argue. We're at the point now that we're almost what do you call that? A symbiotic unit, right? We don't have too much arguments and all that kind of stuff. But I would hope that she believes in me enough to follow my lead, and she's been doing it for 16 years, and we've been eating. So I don't think there's too much of a problem with that. Tanisha?
So I think that works for your household, and so it's going to be different for everyone else's household. I think there is conversations and agreements that can be made on strengths and areas of improvement, strengths and weaknesses. And so the man may have strengths in an area where that woman and that man agree that, you are the leader in this area, and we will continue because that is a foundation that we can build upon. And the areas that, need improvement, we will continue to work on those, and vice versa for the woman. There's the strengths that she carries. And so in that space, that man will say, honey, I trust you, and you are the leader in that. So I think it is based on the individual households, that the people in those households where they have agreements and not expectations, to figure out who at that point is best fit to make those decisions and lead in a certain area. I don't know if there is one particular area that the man, like in all areas, that the man should be the leader and the woman should just submit and not. I think there's a balance, there's duality in everything. And then that keeps the peace. When there's an understanding and agreement, then we get to hold each other accountable in that area if we fall short or don't know.
So that's a loaded word, submission. Right, that starts with fist fights.
It can't, right. And so, but that's what I'm saying, because that's what the word of leadership, it goes into submission. But I think that it is based on the individuals living in that household, that commune together, that live together, that the pillow talk, all of those things that are building together. It's based on that household and what works, and it takes those individuals to be honest with self, to grow to share, and then to agree, uh, in order for it to be healthy, healed, and whole in every single way, mind, body, and soul. So that's my take. So what works for you in your household, James, it works for you. So what does it say? As for me and my household, we will serve. It's the same thing in the leadership and all of that. As for me and my household, my spouse, my significant other, my love, I know his strengths, and I have no problem stepping aside and allowing him and agreeing to let him lead in those areas. Vice versa, he always says I'm not the boss of him. So
He
I
says I'm not the boss of you.
yeah, he goes, you're not the boss of me, but in the thing gets done or the thing, whatever I said. But that is his way of saying, like I know and I trust it, whether I want to do it or not. I know that what you're saying and what you're asking is not here to cause me or do me any harm.
There you go. So, like I said, I'm not saying that I'm always, the testosterone is flying around here and you will do and shut up and sit down. That's not how I do it. So I cook, I clean, right? Because I don't have a job.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be on this call if that's how you were leading. So I know that's not, because you wouldn't even be here to talk if that's how you were moving. It would be another conversation.
You got jokes. But so I listen, I take input and everything, and we make a lot of joint decisions, right? But I usually lead those decisions or throw them on the table, right? For us to have an intelligent conversation. And there's always the sexist roles that we fall into, whether consciously or unconsciously, but a man should kind of run his house, right? I have a friend, he can't leave the porch because his wife tell him he can't go nowhere. Can't do nothing. I can't live like that. So we should each have our space to develop our own selves or ideas or whatever we want to do. Enjoy yourself, but at no time should you be telling me what to do. And I don't do that to her. She can do what she wants to. I'll advise you. I don't think you should do that. That doesn't make sense, right? And again, I guess I'm insulting when I say it doesn't make sense. But I want to be the leader in my house, and I want to make sure, this is my castle, right? And she's the queen, right? You've never heard of the King of England shutting up and let the Queen of England make some decisions, have you?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Listen, and a great leader knows when to follow, because
that's true. Yeah. A good leader is a good follower, and I agree with you. And I just said that I do a lot of roles that are unconventional for a man. Like I do all the cooking, basically. She cooks too. I clean, right? I wash the cars. I do all that kind of stuff. I fix stuff, but and she works. So I'm kind of a stay-at-home guy, right? And she goes out to work. So I make sure she has everything she needs to be successful, and she should make sure I have everything I need to be successful, right? But at no time would I ever tell her anything to hurt her or anything like that. So we grow in that vein. We don't purposely do things. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to grow this way. It just happens kind of naturally, because if you're with somebody so long, like you said, their strengths and their weaknesses, and you feed off each other's strengths and weaknesses.
So you're saying that perhaps you guys make decisions together. I think in my family, we make decisions together and we go towards strengths. Sometimes those decisions are led by me and some by her. In doing that, I respect her space in doing that. And I think respect on that and leadership, who's going to guide that? My dogs are guiding me right now, so I don't know about that. But go ahead.
It's your tone too, right? You have to have tact when you talk to people, right? Now, I'm working on that because sometimes I don't have any tact. Take that off. That don't look right, right? Or how do I look in this dress? That's horrible. Take that off, right? But I've learned to speak a little more peace into her. Baby, I like that, but I think what you had on before looks spectacular. Maybe you need to change it out, right? And she always laughs at me because she knows I'm, messing around, whatever. But I try to speak life into her, but she knows me, so she knows she.
Are you there?
Uh-oh, did you freeze?
He froze.
Yeah, everybody froze.
I could. One of the things that I think is if you're able to serve, wait,
Yeah.
we'll come back on in a second. Then that's when your leadership really shows up. And there's some battles that are worth fighting, and some battles that you just
There you
go,
go.
I don't need this battle at all. In our house, it's decor, and if I want to put a picture on the wall, I can't put a picture on the wall. Well, probably doesn't look good in the first place, but it's not a battle worth fighting. There's so many other things that I would rather do than worry about how
Yes, it is.
it looks. And so, it's cool. Yes, I would rather have it there. And yes, I like it the way I had it. But since you don't, I'm good. Let's look at something else that's
Scared of being put on punishment. I got you.
Well,
Yeah.
a friend of mine, his wife always says that he's the head of the household. She's just the neck, and she guides him where he wants to go.
That's
I like
good.
that.
Yeah.
Yup, that's real. Yup.
I like that.
So she calls herself the neck. Now all the time, I was like, all right, well,
Where would you be without the neck, though? Just think about it.
exactly. You couldn't
can't
take
do
any
anything.
action, right?
Come on
I know
now.
some people don't have no neck.
You know what? No, you're not. James, stop it.
Oh my gosh. Well, we got, this is great. We got to one value today, and I think we fleshed it out pretty good. The other one that you said, Tanisha, was love. Unconditional support, care, and affection for another. And if we lead with love, that's a value, and we can teach that value. And I'm not sure exactly how do we teach love more than, hey, because there's two sides of every coin, right? If you don't know what hate is, it's hard to understand love and what unconditional love is. And should we have, unconditional love in all situations?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I say yes. Listen, I can love you. I remember getting in trouble when I was in college. And I said to a family member, I said, I love you, but I don't have to like you. And so my mother she overheard it, and she was absolutely just disappointed in my words. And I was like, listen, I love everyone. That is my power. That is everything about me. I don't have to like the action. I don't have to accept that. I don't have to tolerate it, because I go where I'm celebrated, not tolerated. So there's a difference. But love, it costs you nothing. You can love someone from afar. That does not mean that you allow them to misuse you, mistreat you, abuse you, any of those things. Unconditional love is unconditional love. And then there is a thing of liking or tolerating bad behavior, just abuse. There is a difference. I was in a situation where there was abuse. My love doesn't change, but the respect for myself and the love for myself is different. So I have to separate in order to elevate. And I think if we lead with love, you get more love. When you learn to love yourself in a healthy way, you get more of that. But love should never be I can take it and give it. I think that just, it doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make sense to me. But I don't have to like you, period. And I can keep it pushing, and you can keep it pushing. And if you go sit on the moon, I still love you, but be on that moon and sit there by yourself. That's the petty in me. But there we go.
See, I kind of disagree. I just can't love people unconditionally like that. Maybe my mother and father, my brother, immediate family, right? And I could love you from a distance, right? But that's not a word that flies out of my mouth all the time, right? I can say nothing but love for you, right? Meaning we're friends. But if every time I see Sam, I love you, right? He might get the wrong impression about that.
Sam might want to hear that.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Mark. I'm just telling you from my point of view. If I tell
would be an
Casper
easy
Rama,
mark.
hey man, I love you, what? It might be misinterpreted. So for me to love you, we have to spend a whole lot of time together, and I have to be able to rely on you. There's a mutual respect and everything else. So that's how I feel about love.
Well, then I'll let you talk, Sam. But I think the issues that we have with the English language compared to, the Greek or the Hebrew, is we only have one word for love, and then we try to interpret it. Where when I think of, in studying and reading, and like eros love is that romantic love. That's the love that you don't want to have. You and Sam are not having that romantic love that's going on, right? But then there's
no, but clarity, right? Clarity on it.
Yeah. And then the phila is like the friendship love. That's the the deep friendship, loyalty, like you were talking about, mutual respect, built on trust, shared experiences. And then there's like this the natural affection between family, the unconditional love that you would have for a brother, a sister, a mother, or father, that is not the romantic. It's not it's unconditional. There's nothing you can do that's going to make me stop loving you. Because you are my friend. And then we have that, the one that I think we try to believe is the love, is that agape love, which is that love like God has for us, that spiritual love, that love that goes beyond, I don't know why I love you, I just do. And so without separating those, and I don't even know how to teach those, because I even, when they say, well, God is love and God loves everybody, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think God got mad at some people and hated them, and that's why we understand and we can grapple with what love is, because we have to understand what hate is. But I don't think we should not love people just because we don't agree with them. And I think that's where we get into, some of our issues, because now we're in our relationships and I don't agree with you and you're not taking my side and you still are being stubborn and you don't get it and it doesn't make any sense. So now I hate you.
So can we hate the action? Can we hate the action and love the person?
Right? We can.
That's where I'm going with it. There's a lot of things in this world that go on that it is not okay. And I'm not giving my attention to, I am not. But for me, love is who I am. So I don't turn it on and off in that sense. Now, what I will do is not associate myself with that action, with that habit that is unsavory, that is evil, that is hateful. But I understand the duality. There's love and there's hate. There's hot and there's cold. There's a duality in the space that we live in. I understand that. But I do not have to tolerate bad behavior and evil actions and
no.
That. I will not. Yeah. That's just what it is. Separate to elevate. But my love, I am love. So that's how I move. And I don't know any other way to explain it. So agape love or what I'm love.
So there's a thin line between love and hate. And some people jump back and forth over that line all the time. Right? And sometimes we get stuck on the wrong side. Right? I grew up with some guys, I have nothing but love for them, right? But at a certain point, something happened and they stayed on that hate side too long, and we just, broke our relationship, our bonds, right? So I wish I had that. I was love, and I could wrap my arms around everybody and everything, but I don't have that.
Tightly around them.
I'm sorry?
I said you wrap your arms tightly around them. I'm talking about another way.
But when you love somebody, though, you bring your walls down, right? Am I right or wrong? You bring those walls down that protect your heart, right, and your spirit and everything. So it's hard for me to, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down those walls, right? Because I don't know what the enemy on the other side is thinking. So love, like when I was single and I was, hanging out with females, not many, right? That L word, it was just something hard to come out with. Even if they said it to me, I didn't feel comfortable saying it back because maybe I have some hate in my heart or whatever, but I could not say that, right? Especially if it was a lie, right? Everybody understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So, it's better to tell the truth and not say it than it is to lie and say it.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, Go ahead, Tim.
With love, I think there are different types of love, and I think if you can give it all, right, and you open your heart and then be truthful and honest and take down those walls, or I think it's a sort of respect that you give that person, right? So therefore, you can still love a person like Shadi is saying, and say, hey, I love the person, I don't like the action. But in the same instance, you can say, hey, you know what? Mine's not conditional to your action, right? But well, she's saying the same thing. In the fact that you're loving the person, but in the relationship that you're in, their bad actions, whether they go back and forth, I don't think your love should change. You just don't have to participate in their bad actions, right?
Yeah, I struggle with that because if I were to think if somebody were to rape my sister or rape my mom and had zero remorse for it and say they would do it again if they had the opportunity, I don't think I could have any love for that person ever. You know, without them.
But you don't have a relationship with them, do you?
No, I'm just saying. But I would hate them. I don't think there would be. It would
Yeah.
be direct opposite that I would. It would. Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know if they said if there was remorse there and there was sorry and there was forgive me and there was you know I guess rehabilitation in some respects that was there. But if it was just pure evil that just said, "Hey, I did it. Now I would do it again as soon as I got the opportunity," and da 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 da. I don't know if I could. That would be a tough thing for me. Go ahead.
Well, what if that person was your brother?
Yeah, and I said
You know, I
there's
mean,
nothing you could do unconditionally, right?
yeah, I mean, because you're saying, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
You're saying if it was a stranger, I'd hate him my whole life. But let's say he's your brother, and he took those actions. Is there still love then?
There's
No
Your
remorse.
sister.
a story about that recently, or I don't know how recent, but there was a man who found out that his brother had raped, molested his daughter, and he dismembered his brother, and was like, "You won't get to do this to anyone else." Um, it was the hate for the action, and this is my
Mhm.
brother. But I separate. There was a separation between like you did this horrible action that still my brother. I love you. It was better for me to kill you than, and I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying this was the story. You know, he dismembered his brother and was happy to go to jail for it. And stated, my brother did this, and yeah, love my brother, but the action, this is what the result is.
So that was his consequence, even though you're loving him, then, right?
He figured out the consequences. It's not for me to decide what that was. That just was the story. I was like, oh, yeah.
So I'm not going to jail for anybody, right? My freedom is of paramount importance to me. Love you or not, I'm not doing it. Thank God for a lot of people need to thank God that there are jails, right? Because that's probably the only reason they're walking around in the street. Because if people could just do what they want to and get away with it, there would be a lot of problems. But I'll tell you that I've had some family members do me wrong, right? And I step away for a while, like say love from a distance, right? And again, it might be the action, but the action is a reflection of the person's mindset and or their heart, right?
Mhm.
Because I've seen some people do some evil things, right? And it's not the action that was the action was a reflection of their inner self. So yeah, that's kind of a hard one, the love and all that.
So my big question now then is, how do we perform as a good leader, as a good husband or a good wife, if the love that we have for ourselves isn't present? How do we love others if we can't even love ourselves? And then how does that manifest itself inside of our relationships?
Yeah, there's gonna be issues with the relationship.
I can't hear her. Anyway, so I'm just. Are you talking to Nisha?
I was, but can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
I said there's definitely gonna be issues within the relationship if you don't know how to love yourself. then again, that expectation of having someone love you more than you love yourself is just it that is not feasible. You have to know how to love yourself so that you can receive the love that you deserve in return, because it's going to get exhausting on the other side. So I had to learn how to love myself in order to receive the good love that I deserved and I'm worthy of. I had to remember my royalty. I had to remember that I am my ancestors' wildest dreams come true, and that I am a physical representation of source, of God, being a goddess, however you want to explain it. That's who I am. But I had to rediscover that love for myself in order to receive healthy, healed love from anywhere else.
So I'm not sure, Tanisha, if you grew up with a lot of love in your house, or your parents constantly told you they loved you. In my house, it was kind of implied, so I never really had anybody come out and say, "Hey, I love you." So I remember my first time deploying. Right. Well, actually, when I got married the first time, and spent the night, hung out with her, whatever, and she said, "I love you." I was like, "What?" I had to think about it. Wow. I don't even love myself. I'm out here, going off to war. I don't care, whatever. I might get killed. I wasn't even thinking about it, right? And when she said, "I love you," I was like, man, somebody loves me. Now I got something to come back to. What does that mean? Right? So when anybody ever says that to me, it messes me up. One of my friends, he said that because I was telling him, "Hey, man, let's do this. I'll do this for you, blah, blah." He said, "Man, I got to tell you something." What's up? He said, "I love you." Now, at first, I was like, okay. And it wasn't in a Diddy way, right? But when he said it, I was like, okay, that's I can kind of appreciate that, right? As long as you don't have no baby oil in your hand, we're good, right?
I
Oh my.
cannot you
I found myself saying that to brothers, right? I started a group called the Gentleman's Table, and we're brothers, and I bring up this term brotherly love, and we talk about business and kind of like this, right?
Mhm.
And I love
Yeah.
for y'all to join me by Zoom or whenever we have it again. I think we're gonna have it on the 30th of next month, whatever. Just some insightful conversations. We talk about a lot of things, and we see each other as adversaries all the time, right? We don't give ourselves a chance to love each other or have the respect or whatever, right? And when you actually have that,
I'm not bad.
you know, it's I don't trust a lot of people, right? And when somebody comes into my sphere and wants to do something for me, right, it shocks me, right? So when I see other brothers, I say, "Hey, let me do this for you." What? You'd give me your time to show me something, right? It's just a surprised look on their face. And we have to love each other. And that, again, the Eros way, right?
Mhm.
To grow together. And that's one of our problems as a community. We don't have that Eros love for each other. And then there's the other love that you talk about between the man and woman. We don't have that either. So we have to develop all these things. Love you, Sam.
Were you
I
gonna
love
say
you too, brother.
Eros.
Eros, of course. Yeah, I
actually?
think it's the tone that you say it and where it becomes Eros. I think your craziness. You do that on purpose for a reaction. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I just want to see reaction. When I tell my wife I love her, yeah, whatever, right?
Yeah,
Because she's
whatever.
heard it so many times, whatever. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just important, when I think of how many of us, the way that we were brought up, or the way that we really struggle with that love for ourselves. We don't think we're enough. We don't think that we belong. We think that we have flaws. And then it's really hard to go from that to loving somebody else, and making sure. And if I don't know how to necessarily teach love for yourself, I think it's part of the self-esteem part. Is part of helping people believe in themselves, helping them find ways that they can succeed at stuff. But until we can get there, it's really hard to get past all the other things. And I think that's especially in our communities where there's such self-loathing, for you go and you make mistakes and you do stuff and you beat yourself up because you don't have an outlet, or you don't have a way, um, to rationalize some of the things. And I even think of for our vets and stuff that were in combat that they're mad at themselves because they took somebody else's life, or they did these things that they didn't believe in when they were doing them, and as a result they come back and they don't believe in themselves. And so so important to do that. Sam, did you want to say something? I didn't want to cut you off. Okay, cool.
So I think a lot of self-loathing comes from the history we're taught. I was taught in school that all we were slaves. So my self-worth was like down here, right? Until I went to a HBCU and took a Black diaspora class and learned about Black inventions and, mighty Africa. My chest started sticking out. And when I purposely do this, right? I asked people, I said, hey, can you name 5 Black inventors? Right? And I'm talking about Black people, right?
Yeah,
whatever, right? And the look on their face, Martin Luther King. You always get the hot comb or George Washington Carver, but there's more to it than that, right? We're not taught our own history. And I think it's a shame that the current administration is blocking Black history. They don't want Black history taught, right? So when we talk about love and respect and all this other stuff, we don't respect each other. We don't love each other because we were taught we weren't anything to be loved or be respected. So that's just my 2 cents.
I love it. And that's why we're having this conversation, and that's why we're talking about it, and hopefully people can glean from it. Well, I have 8 more, but we're not going to do 8 more tonight. We're gonna end with respect and love tonight. We'll come back next week. We'll do some more. Thank you guys for just being open and honest and vulnerable with yourself. I believe that we're God's greatest gift, and He loves us, and we have the ability to love others, and that's super important. And we have the ability to respect others, but we have to respect ourselves first. We have to love ourselves first before we can give that out to other folks. Does any of you guys have any closing thoughts before we end tonight?
Thank you for having me on again.
A little bit louder.
Wait, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thank you for having me on again. This is a great conversation.
All right. We'll look
love yourselves. Love yourself.
Love yourself.
Love each other and love yourself. I love it.
Love yourselves. All right. Well, cool. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you for another good night, and we will talk to you guys on the next one.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Love you more.
Love you more, sis.